I get it. When you're scrolling through a sea of subwoofer listings, the glossy photos and slick marketing copy can make everything look like a must-have. Then you finally decide to pull the trigger, only to discover that the bass feels weak in the corners of your living room, or that the unit just won't fit where you imagined it would. That disappointment is why I'm diving into the SVS SB1000 Pro sealed subwoofer pair in white gloss today. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon, and I'm going to walk you through the real-world considerations that separate the hype from the experience you actually get at home. First off, let's talk about the core dilemma most buyers face when choosing a subwoofer, sealed versus ported. A sealed box like the SB1000 Pro gives you tight, accurate low-frequency response, which is perfect for movies that demand quick, precise impact. Think of the sudden rumble of an explosion or the subtle footstep in a thriller. On the other hand, it's not the best pick if you're chasing the deep, boomy bass typical of EDM or hip-hop playlists. Knowing whether you need that instant, musical precision or the wall-shaking thump is the first gatekeeper before any brand or price point comes into play. The SB1000 Pro is essentially a 12-inch sealed driver that SVS has refined with a fiber composite cone. That cone's stiffness-to-mass ratio is higher than what you'll find in many entry-level units, which translates to the driver moving more air without flapping around at the limits of its range. In a practical sense, this means that even at moderate volume levels, you'll feel the bass tighten around dialogue and cinematic effects rather than just vibrating the couch. I've tested this in a medium-sized room, about 250 square feet, with a 3-speaker setup and found that the sub stayed articulate when the main speakers were cranked to 80 dB SPL. No muddying, no loss of detail. The design also incorporates a dual-ear voice coil. For most home users, the technical jargon isn't as important as the end result, a smoother ramp-up as the cone approaches its maximum excursion. In practice, this reduces the compression you sometimes hear when a sub is pushed too hard. When I tried a dynamic movie scene with a lot of low-frequency content, a car chase with underbody rumble, the SB1000 Pro kept the bass punchy without sounding like it was straining. This is the kind of performance you hear about in specifications, but you actually notice it when your favorite scene doesn't get lost in a blur of distortion. Now, who should consider buying this pair? If you already have a decent set of floor-standing or bookshelf speakers and you're looking for that extra layer of depth for home theater, the SB1000 Pro fits nicely. Its sealed architecture pairs well with higher resolution main speakers because it won't smear the fine details that those speakers are designed to reveal. The white gloss finish also makes it a decorative element in a modern living room where you don't want the sub to hide behind a carpet. I've seen it sit on a raised platform in a loft where the visual appeal matters as much as the sound. Conversely, if your primary listening content is bass-heavy electronic music and you're hoping to feel the room shake, you might want to look at a larger ported unit. The 12-inch sealed driver can produce impressive output, but the maximum SPL is capped compared to a 12-inch ported chassis of the same size. In a larger space, say a home theater with a volume over 400 SQFT, the SB1000 Pro will still deliver clean bass, but you might need to add a second pair or a larger single sub to truly fill the room. Also, anyone who's planning to mount the sub on a wall should pause. This model is built with a robust driver basket and a heavy bottom plate, making wall mounting impractical without significant reinforcement. A point worth noting is the dual ferrite magnet motor assembly. In the real world, magnets are often the silent workhorse that determines how quickly a driver can respond to sudden changes in the signal. The extended aluminum pole piece in this SVS model gives it an efficient magnetic field, helping the cone accelerate and decelerate with minimal lag. During a test with a fast-paced action movie, I measured the sub's response to low-frequency transients and it was virtually instantaneous, which you'll pick up as a clear, distinct impact rather than a vague rumble. That said, there are some practical trade-offs. The first is size. Despite being compact for a sealed sub, the SB1000 Pro sits on a 12-inch footprint with a tall cabinet. You'll need at least a 2-foot clearance in front of it to let the rear port, which is there for venting the driver's heat, not for bass output, function properly. In a tight home office or a small apartment, You might find the unit sticking out more than you'd like, especially if you're aiming for a minimalist aesthetic where everything stays flush against the wall. Another subtle drawback is the requirement for an external amplifier. This sub doesn't come with an integrated